Two people make the same salary this year. One of them will look back in 10 years and feel proud of every decision they made with their money. The other will look back and wonder where it all went. Neither of them got unlucky. Neither of them had some huge disaster wipe out their savings. They just made small decisions over and over that felt harmless in the moment. This is not about how much you make. It is about what your daily decisions are quietly building, one choice at a time, without you ever noticing it happen. Most people who struggle with money aren't struggling because they lack information. They already know they're supposed to spend less than they earn. What actually separates people isn't what they know. It's whether they apply it consistently in the small moments where nobody's watching. Today, I want to show you 8 lessons that separate the people who actually build wealth from the people who just look like they're doing fine. These are not complicated formulas. You will not need a spreadsheet and you will not need a finance degree. They are small shifts in how you think about money. Let's get into lesson number 1. Lesson 1, stop sacrificing your future for what you want today. Here's the first lesson, and it's the one everything else is built on. The ability to delay a reward now for something bigger later is the single biggest skill separating people who build wealth from people who don't. This shows up constantly in investing. Money that sits in the market for 10 years behaves differently than money that sits in the market for 30. The longer it stays untouched, the more time compounding has to work in your favor. That's exactly why financial professionals tell people not to touch their retirement accounts early. It's not because the money is locked away out of spite. It's because every year that money keeps compounding, it becomes worth more to your future self than it's worth to your present self today. This same principle shows up in ordinary purchases too. And here's a simple filter you can use. If you can only afford to buy something once, you probably can't actually afford it. Say there's an item in front of you worth $500. Maybe it's a new gaming console. Maybe it's a designer jacket. If you can pay for that once without stress, but the idea of buying 2 of them at $1,000 total makes your stomach turn, that's useful information. It means the $500 purchase is sitting right at the edge of what your finances can comfortably absorb, and edges are where mistakes happen. The same instinct applies to bigger decisions too, not just purchases. Career moves, job changes, relocations. If you zoom out 10 or 20 years on a decision, the picture usually gets a lot clearer than it looks up close. A short-term raise that pulls you toward a career path you don't want 2 decades from now isn't really a win, even though it feels like one this month. The people who built real wealth aren't the ones with the most willpower in the world. They're the ones who've trained themselves to ask one question before almost every financial decision. Not, can I afford this today? But what does this decision cost me later? Here's what later actually looks like in dollars. Take that same $500 and invest it instead at a 7% average return. Leave it alone for 30 years and it grows to somewhere around $3,800. You didn't do anything except not spend it. The delay itself was the entire strategy. That's the quiet math sitting behind every just this once purchase. It's never really $500. It's $500 plus whatever that money would have quietly become if you'd left it alone. Now that we've covered the mindset behind smart decisions, let's get into the actual numbers you need to be tracking to know if those decisions are working. Lesson 2, know the 3 numbers controlling your financial life. There are 3 numbers that tell you almost everything about your financial life, and most people can't state any of them from memory. If you can't tell me your monthly expenses, your savings rate, and your net worth right now off the top of your head, that's the first thing to fix. You can't improve a number you're not tracking. The first number is your expenses, and there are 2 categories worth separating. The first category is your fixed expenses, housing, transportation, insurance, utilities, and any recurring bill you can't easily change month to month. As a rough target, these shouldn't eat up more than half to 60% of your income. Once fixed costs cross that line, there usually isn't enough room left for saving, investing, or even basic breathing room. The second category is discretionary spending, the stuff you control week to week. A simple trick here is a mid-month check-in. If your monthly discretionary budget is $1,500, you should be sitting around $750 by the middle of the month. If you're already at $900 by the 15th, you know exactly where to pull back before the month is out. The second number is your savings rate, the percentage of your income you're keeping instead of spending. This matters more right now than most people realize. According to the most recent data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the average American's personal saving rate sits at just 2.7%. That means for every $100 that comes in, the average person is only keeping about $2.70 of it. If your own goal is somewhere around 10% or higher, you're already saving at multiple times the national average, which tells you how far ahead that one habit puts you. The third number is your net worth, everything you own minus everything you owe. This one matters less for day-to-day decisions and more for long-term perspective. Checking it every few months and comparing it to where it sat a year or two earlier gives you actual proof of whether your financial life is moving forward or standing still instead of just a feeling about it. Picture two people, both with $15,000 sitting in a checking account. One of them also owes $40,000 in credit card and car debt. The other one owes nothing. Same bank balance on the surface, completely different net worth underneath it. If you only ever look at what's coming into your account, you'll never catch the difference between those two people, and you might not realize which one you are. What matters most is this. Tracking these three numbers turns a vague sense of, I think I'm doing okay, into something you can measure and improve. And once you can measure something, you can start making it better on purpose instead of by accident. Once you know how much you can realistically save, the next mistake is assuming that growing that money has to be complicated. Lesson 3. The best investment strategy is usually simple, boring, and long-term. This lesson covers 3 separate ideas, and they're grouped together because they're really 3 sides of the same principle. The people who build the most wealth from investing usually aren't doing anything complicated, exciting, or exotic. The first part is about keeping your portfolio simple. The second part is about thinking in decades, not months. And the third part is about tolerating boredom. Let's start with the first part, keeping it simple. A lot of people think owning more investments automatically means they're more diversified, so they end up holding 10 or 12 different funds. But here's the catch. Many of those funds overlap heavily with each other. You could think you're spreading risk across a dozen holdings while actually owning a lot of the exact same handful of companies over and over, just wrapped in different fund names. That's not diversification. That's complexity that makes your portfolio harder to track without reducing your risk at all. Here's a concrete version of this. Someone owns a total U.S. stock market fund and then adds a separate large cap growth fund on top of it, thinking they're building a more aggressive, more diversified mix. In reality, a huge share of that growth fund's holdings are the exact same big companies already sitting inside the total market fund. They think they've built 2 positions. They've mostly just bought 1 position twice under 2 different names. The second part is about time horizon. Markets can absolutely drop over a given month or even a given year, and expensive markets can produce weaker short-term returns. But historically, the longer someone stayed invested in the broad U.S. stock market, the less likely they were to end up with a negative return over that stretch. In fact, going back to 1928, there has never been a single 20-year rolling period where the S&P 500 lost. Money once dividends are included. Not through the Great Depression, not through the 2008 financial crisis, not through any crash in between. That doesn't guarantee the future looks exactly like the past. It means time in the market has historically done more work than trying to perfectly time when to jump in and out of it. Which brings us to the third part, the one people find hardest, letting investing be boring. Here's a number worth sitting with. According to the latest year-end scorecard from S&P Dow Jones Indices, 79% of actively managed large-cap U.S. stock funds underperformed the S&P 500 in 2025 alone, up from 65% the year before. Stretch that out to a full 20-year period, and the number climbs to somewhere around 92% of funds underperforming their benchmark, meaning the professionals whose entire job is picking winning stocks mostly can't beat a simple index fund that does no picking at all. So if the professionals with research teams and trading terminals mostly can't beat a plain index fund, stock picking with a laptop on your lunch break is an even tougher game to win consistently. And it's not just the professionals losing this game. Regular investors do it to themselves too. Morningstar's most recent Mind the Gap study found that the average investor's actual return trailed the very same funds they were invested in by about 1.2 percentage points a year over the 10 years ending in 2024. That gap comes almost entirely from behavior. Not bad luck, selling in a panic during a drop, then buying back into a fund only after it's already had its big run. The fund itself did fine. It was the timing that cost people the difference. Boring investing looks like this. Choose a diversified, low-cost fund, contribute to it consistently, and leave it alone through the normal ups and downs. The goal was never to make investing thrilling. The goal is to make it work. Simple and boring will protect you from chasing returns. It won't protect you from something else entirely. Borrowing money to buy things that are guaranteed to lose value the moment you drive them off the lot or carry them out of the store. Lesson 4, stop borrowing money to buy things that lose value. Cars, phones, computers, watches, clothing, furniture, nearly everything you can buy loses value the moment you own it. That part is normal and mostly unavoidable. The actual danger isn't owning depreciating things. It's borrowing expensive money to buy them, which means you're paying interest on top of an asset that's already shrinking in value every single month. Cars are the clearest example of this happening at scale right now. According to Experian's most recent data from 2026, the average monthly payment on a new car is $770. That's financed on an average loan of roughly $44,000 at an interest rate just over 6%, and more than a third of new car loans now stretch out past 6 years. Run that math and it gets worse. A $44,000 loan at that rate, stretched over 6 years, costs around $9,000 in interest alone. $9,000 that bought the owner nothing extra, just time. Now, I want to be fair here. This doesn't mean every car loan, phone upgrade, or new couch is a financial disaster. The problem isn't the purchase. The problem is the pattern. Borrowing more than you need, extending the payments long after the excitement has worn off, and replacing things constantly because something newer exists. And a car payment is never just the car payment. There's insurance stacked on top, usually higher for a newer, more expensive vehicle. There's fuel, routine maintenance, registration fees that go up as the sticker price goes up. Add all of that to the loan payment itself, and the real monthly cost of that car is often several $100s higher than the number the buyer budgeted for. And the account that's supposed to be building your emergency fund or your retirement savings often never gets funded because the car payment always gets paid first. This is where it really costs people. Eventually, that same car gets listed for a fraction of what's still owed on it, and the payments keep going even after the car itself has lost most of its value. The lesson isn't never buy anything that depreciates. It's this: don't spend years paying interest to own something that's worth less every single month you own it. Avoiding bad debt protects the money you already have, but protecting your future also requires building up enough savings for compounding to have something to work with. Lesson 5, your savings will build your first $100,000. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. In the earliest stage of building wealth, your own savings usually do more heavy lifting than your investment returns do. Investment growth becomes powerful later. In the early stretch, it's mostly just math working in slow motion. Here's why the early stage feels so slow. A 7% return sounds identical, whether you're calculating it on $1,000 or $100,000, but 7% of $1,000 is only $70. 7% of $100,000 is $7,000. Same percentage, completely different result, because the size of what you're growing is what determines the size of the growth. Let's put real numbers on it. Say you save $1,200 a month and earn a 7% annual return. It takes about 6 years to cross the $100,000 mark. But here's the part that matters. About 81% of that balance is money you actually put in yourself. Not growth, not a lucky pick, just consistent saving. This is why the first major milestone, somewhere around $100,000, is usually built mostly by saving, not by extraordinary investment picks. Investment growth becomes the dominant force after that initial base exists. Beginners who obsess over finding the perfect fund or the hottest stock are usually solving the wrong problem. Increasing how much you contribute almost always moves the needle faster than chasing a marginally better return. If your account feels like it's barely growing right now, that doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong. It usually means you're still in the friction stage, the part where saving is doing more work than compounding. That's temporary, not permanent. This is also why chasing a slightly higher return during this stage matters far less than people assume. The difference between a 7% return and an 8% return on $10,000 is only about $100 a year. The difference between saving $200 a month and saving $500 a month is thousands of dollars a year, immediately. At this stage, your own contribution rate is the lever that actually moves. Before your money can start working hard for you, you have to hand it enough money to work with. Saving consistently gets a lot harder, though, when your spending decisions are being quietly steered by what your friends, your coworkers, and total strangers online appear to have. Lesson 6, stop letting other people's money. Decisions control yours. Comparison is one of the most expensive habits in personal finance, and social media has turned it into something running in the background of your day, whether you're paying attention to it or not. There's actually a term researchers use for this now: money dysmorphia. Feeling financially behind or insecure despite being financially fine, purely because of what you're seeing online. And it's not just a feeling that stays in your head. Recent research on social spending habits found that over a third of people admit to overspending specifically to keep up with the version of life their friends appear to be living online. Here's the problem with comparing your situation to someone else's. You're not actually seeing their full financial picture. You're seeing the vacation, not the credit card balance that paid for it. You're seeing the new car, not the 6-year loan attached to it. Nobody posts a picture of their retirement account or their emergency fund. So the comparison was never a fair one to begin with. Think about how this plays out with something as simple as a coworker's new kitchen renovation. You see the finished photos. You don't see that it was financed on a personal loan they're still paying off 2 years later, or that they skipped contributing to their retirement account for 6 straight months to afford it. All you saw was the countertop. All you felt was behind. And comparison doesn't just make you feel behind. It actively changes what you buy. It's what pushes people into impulse purchases, lifestyle upgrades they didn't want a month ago, and debt they wouldn't have taken on if they'd never seen the post in the first place. A useful filter here: before buying something because someone else has it, ask yourself if you'd still want it if nobody else would ever see it. If the honest answer is no, that purchase was never really about you. You can't build a financial life that fits your actual goals while you're constantly measuring yourself against a life that was built for someone else's. And comparison doesn't just influence what people buy in the moment. Sometimes it pushes people to build an entire lifestyle designed to look wealthier than they actually are. Lesson 7, looking rich can keep you from ever becoming rich. There's a real difference between spending money to look successful and using money to become financially secure, and a huge number of people are optimizing for the first one without realizing it. Someone can drive an expensive car, wear expensive clothes, and eat out constantly and still be sitting on almost nothing underneath it. According to Bankrate's 2026 Emergency Savings Report, only 47% of Americans currently have enough set aside to cover a $1,000 emergency. That means over half the country is one surprise expense away from going into debt, regardless of what their day to day spending might suggest about their financial position. Picture that person: nice car, good watch, always at the good restaurants, but no real emergency fund, a credit card balance that never quite goes to zero, and a lifestyle that would fall apart the moment a paycheck got delayed by even a week. This is what makes the trap so effective. Looking wealthy is visible. Building wealth is usually invisible. You can see the car, the vacation, the watch, the dinner out. You can't see the loan balance behind the car, the missed retirement contribution, the empty emergency fund, or the quiet financial stress underneath all of it. Meanwhile, the people who actually have money quietly building in the background often look completely unremarkable day to day. Same car for a decade, same modest apartment, nothing about their spending signals what their bank account says, because they were never trying to prove anything with it in the first place. I'm not saying you can never enjoy your money or spend on things that make life better. The issue isn't the nice dinner. The issue is when the appearance of wealth becomes the entire strategy, replacing the actual work of building it. The fastest way to look rich can quietly become the slowest way to actually become rich. Even once you've let go of comparison and stopped chasing appearances, there's still one more trap worth naming: assuming a financial strategy that worked for someone else will automatically work for you, too. Lesson 8. Not every good financial decision is good for you. Good financial advice isn't universal. It has to be filtered through your actual situation, your income, your expenses, the people depending on you, your debt, your emergency savings, how secure your job is, and how far away your goals are. Two people can hear the exact same advice and get completely different results from it. A volatile, high growth investment might make total sense for someone with 30 years until retirement and no need for that money anytime soon. That same investment could be genuinely reckless for someone who needs that money in 2 years. Leaving a stable job to take a risk might be a smart move for someone with a solid emergency fund behind them. That exact same move could be financially dangerous for someone living paycheck to paycheck with no cushion at all. Buying a home might build long-term security around one person's specific goals while locking another person into payments that quietly restrict every other financial decision they try to make for the next decade. Even paying off low-interest debt aggressively, something that sounds responsible on the surface, might bring one person peace of mind while costing another person years of missed investment growth they could have had instead. None of this means you should ignore financial advice. It means you should stop copying decisions just because a creator recommended them, a wealthy person did them, or a friend had success with them. A friend retires early on a modest income, and everyone wants to know their secret. But that same friend also has no kids, no mortgage, and a pension covering half their expenses for life. Copy the strategy without copying the circumstances behind it, and you're not applying their advice. You're just applying their math to a completely different set of numbers and expecting the same result. Good advice becomes bad advice the moment it gets applied to the wrong person, at the wrong time, for the wrong reason. Conclusion: let's bring this back to where we started. Two people earning the exact same salary, living completely different financial lives 10 years later. By now, you can probably see why. It was never about the paycheck. It was about delaying gratification instead of chasing every reward immediately, tracking the numbers that matter instead of guessing, keeping investments simple instead of complicated, refusing to finance things that lose value the moment you own them, saving aggressively at the start before compounding had anything real to work with, ignoring the comparison game instead of quietly competing in it, building actual wealth instead of just performing it, and running every piece of advice through the filter of your own specific life instead of copying someone else's. None of these 8 lessons are complicated. That was never the problem. The real question isn't whether you understand them, it's which one of them you're actually going to start applying this week. You don't need to fix all 8 at once. Most people who turn their finances around didn't overhaul everything overnight. They picked the one lesson that hit closest to home, changed that one thing, and let it compound right alongside their money. If any of this landed for you, that's really the whole reason I make these. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you want more of this, subscribing is the easiest way to support the channel, and I genuinely appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.